I worked at a local pizza shop in my mid-20s. It was just a small place that did deliveries and had a few tables inside for dining in. In all honesty, the food wasn't that great. The only thing that was really special about the place was that it was open 24/7, so any not-so-sober people would usually come in all throughout the night. I often worked alone, but I didn't mind it. Actually, I preferred it. None of the food was hard to make, and whenever it was slow, I could usually do whatever I wanted while waiting around. This night was no different than any other, at least to start. I headed in at 9 p.m. and took over for the day manager. There were no special tasks or anything that I had to do that night, and with it being a Tuesday, I was prepared for a chill night. I prepped some of the workstations in the back and just waited for any orders to come through. I got a few customers in the next couple hours, but then it went radio silent. No walk-ins or calls. I pretty much sat on a chair in the back of the kitchen and scrolled on my phone the whole time. But around 1 a.m., I heard the bell by the door ring, which happened every time someone opened the door. I got up and walked to the front where the counter was, but I stopped as soon as I could see the main room. Nobody was in there. I stood in place and looked side to side, but there wasn't anyone at all. A short smile broke across my face as I walked further up and quadruple checked that nobody came in. I found it funny, like I must have been so used to hearing that sound all night long that my brain was playing tricks on me now. Being sure it was nothing, I went back to my chair in the kitchen. I really didn't think about it at all after that. For the next 15 minutes, there were still no calls or customers, until I heard the bell ring again. This time, I wasn't even watching a video when it happened, so I knew I actually heard it. I got up and walked into the main room, but stopped in confusion again. Nobody was in there. After a second, I walked up to the front door and opened it, sticking my head outside and looking up and down the sidewalk that went along the building. There was nobody out there, not even any cars in the parking lot. I wouldn't say I was really scared or creeped out, but more so just really confused. I messed around with the door for a little bit, trying to see if it would ring without opening, but it didn't seem to. This was really weird, but I didn't know what else to do about it. I stayed up front for a while, at least 30 minutes, waiting for the door to ring again, but it never did, so I went back to the kitchen. It was between 2 and 3 a.m., which was always the slowest time of the night. Unsurprisingly, once I was in the back again, only a few minutes went by before the door rang again. This time, I stayed sitting and listened for anyone. I didn't hear anything, but just to be safe, I called out, "Hello? Is someone out there?" I got no response. I figured it was just the door doing whatever the hell it was doing, so I just ignored it and stayed back and continued on my phone. Somehow, there wasn't a single customer for a whole hour after that, so basically the past 3 hours were completely dead. It was 4 a.m., so for my last hour, I had to start prepping everything for the next shift. I got up and went to the front. I started counting the register from the few orders I had at the beginning of my shift, but while I was there, I felt strange. Something just felt off. I kept looking up at the empty room ahead of me and back at the kitchen behind me, feeling like I was being watched or something. I thought it was just the unusual nature of the night I was having, with the door and everything. I was just thankful my shift was over soon. Another couple minutes went by when I suddenly heard a thump on the floor behind me. It was just like a boot stepping on the ground, which instantly sent a chill through me and made me quickly turn around. I felt my breath leave my lungs. There was a man standing just 5 or 6 feet away from me. He had all black, ripped up clothes and a hoodie draping over his face, stopping just above his eyes. His eyes were bloodshot and hollow. I don't know if he was drunk or high or what, but he clearly wasn't sane right now. Then I saw his left hand was holding a knife. His knuckles were white from how tightly he was clenching it. I stayed motionless, trying not to escalate anything, but after several seconds of him not making a move and just staring at me, I decided to speak. "Hey, listen, you can have the cash from the register. I won't say anything. Please just let me go," I said, trying to say anything I could to get out of this. He just stood there though, still clenching the knife and having that 1,000-yard stare. Honestly, I think I was even more terrified because he clearly wasn't some normal guy. There was no predicting what he might do. The counter I was at was L-shaped, extending toward the back where he was, so to run away, I'd actually have to run a couple feet toward him and around the counter, then back toward the front door. With him only being 5 feet from me, he could easily grab me or attack me if I tried. So I did the next best option. I basically dove over top the counter. It wasn't pretty, but I guess it kind of worked. I slammed into the ground and got up. The guy was already sprinting at me with a face of uncontrollable bloodlust and rage. I ran out the door and only got a few seconds away before I heard him get out the door as well. He was too close for me to even try getting inside my car, which was behind the building. I just kept running, making it to the road and hoping a car might drive by and help. But at some point, he stopped chasing. I don't know when, because I was so focused on sprinting and not looking back. I called the cops and waited at the road for them to get here. It took about 5 minutes. The guy was gone, but I guess after chasing me, he went back inside the shop and just demolished the place. Everything was trashed, and he left out the back door, where he then scraped his knife all over the side of my car. It's likely he was watching me inside the shop through the windows from a distance and using the door as a distraction, hoping to slip in without being noticed. Admittedly, it worked perfectly, which makes me feel pretty dumb. It's also pretty creepy knowing that there was about an hour gap between the last time the door rang and when I saw him, so he was probably hiding inside the shop that whole time. It's really strange though, because I really had no idea who he was. I really thought he was just some random guy, but his actions seemed oddly directed toward me. Maybe it was just a wrong place, wrong time sort of thing. I don't know. They never found him. I didn't stay working there very long after that, fearing that he might come back.
So I'm in the bathroom right now. I'm not going to the bathroom if you're wondering. But I'm hearing like shuffling sounds outside the door. And I need to put the camera. Bro, what the f was that? No. I swear to God, I heard like a woman talking in here. I swear to God, I heard a woman talking. What the fuck? Oh, no. No, I'm not doing that. Hello? Oh my God, what the f? What the f? Bro. Holy no. I'm over at the restaurant right now that's connected to our hotel. The door's been wide open. And they said they've seen lights going on and off in here. This is the attic area.
For a few months, I worked a night shift at a 24-hour gas station in northern West Virginia. It was a Wednesday night. It started like any other normal shift at work, any day of the week. A few people stopped in here and there, mainly buying lottery tickets and paying for gas. Forward it a few hours, it was 3 a.m, and the traffic had died down a little bit. I was sitting up front when I watched a maroon Lincoln sedan pull into the parking lot and park in the back behind all the gas pumps. It was a couple of minutes later when a woman emerged from the front passenger seat who sort of stumbled out of the car and started approaching the gas station. I watched her as she walked in at a rather brisk pace, in a very nervous kind of fashion. I instantly noticed that her face was pale and she had sweat perspiring on her forehead. Mind you, it was the dead of winter and I'm pretty sure that the temperature was below 0 degrees that night. She walked past the counter and headed straight towards the back to the bathrooms. She came out about 5 minutes later and her body language was really starting to concern me. She was kind of pacing back and forth in the aisles, occasionally peeking her head around and looking out the windows towards the car. Right as I thought about saying something, she walked right out of the door and headed in the direction towards the car that was parked across the lot. About 5 minutes went by and the car didn't move. But then suddenly the car went into reverse and did a 180 towards the gas pumps and parked beside one. The car was much closer now, so I was able to see the woman inside, who was accompanied by a man in the front seat. Another minute went by, then the passenger door sprung open, and the woman who previously came in began walking towards the building again. This time, when she walked by, it was becoming more and more obvious to me that something was wrong. She walked towards the counter, holding a $20 bill, and said, "20 on pump 5, in a quiet, shaky voice. I took it and continued to watch her body language, seeing that her hands were clenched in a fist, in addition to the sweat on her forehead. I looked at her with concern, and I think she noticed it on my face, not trying to make it obvious in case the man outside was watching me. I said to her, "Is everything all right?" And she looked up at me, not saying a word for at least 5 seconds, until she replied, "Yes, thank you." I didn't buy it, and continued to question her, saying, "Do you know who that guy is in the car?" And she responded with, yeah, that's my boyfriend." I didn't believe any of this to be true, and I watched as she approached the car, right as she opened the passenger's door. The man handed her something, and she grabbed it and promptly turned backwards towards the building. She walked in and instantly went to the chip aisle, where she paced around again and eventually bought a bag of chips to the counter. I was finally able to make out what the man had handed her. It was a $5 bill. I looked at her again with concern, but didn't want to continue badgering her, also acknowledging the possibility of her temperament being from an argument or something. She slapped it down on the counter, then did something I never would have expected. She leaned in and reached towards the lighters, which are close to the back of the counter by me, and faintly muttered under her breath, "I need help." Those words raised the hairs on the back of my neck and confirmed my suspicions. I casually replied, acting like I was ringing her out, and said, "Do you want me to call the police?" And she nodded her head. I pressed the panic button that was located under the counter, which alerted 911 of an emergency. Right after doing so, I looked up and I noticed that the girl was heading towards the exit. I ran around the counter and went straight for the door, just as she was about to walk out. I told her to stop and lock the door before she could leave. She instantly started crying and was clearly in shock from the whole situation. She kept repeating these words that still give me chills just thinking about it to this day. "He's gonna get mad, he's gonna get mad." I told her to follow me, and I took her to the back room where I deadbolted the lock shut, locking us both inside. I assured her that the police were on their way and everything was going to be okay. I had no choice but to remain calm in the situation, because if I didn't, I knew she would freak out even more. However, the sheer feeling of panic continued to grow when the man suddenly started pounding on the outside door of the gas station, screaming the girl's name. This occurrence was enough to send her into total shock, and she just sat down and became completely emotionless and silent. The pounding lasted for another few minutes until it finally grew quiet. I didn't know if the man had broken through or what, but I wasn't going to go out there and find out. A couple of minutes after that, the police arrived, kicked the back door down, and eventually we came out. I was instantly separated from the girl who got picked up in an ambulance. I was taken to the police station to give a statement where I explained everything that happened. After that, I was sent home for the rest of the night, and I didn't hear anything until a couple of weeks later. I found out online that the woman was being trafficked that night. She had been kidnapped, about 45 minutes away, in a Walmart parking lot. The article gave a description and a sketch of the suspect, which looked a lot like the guy I saw the night in the car. Apparently the driver was heading south to wherever he was planning on taking her. The woman was able to convince the man to pull over so she could use the restroom. While he was there, he sent the girl back in to pay for the gas. The girl must have convinced him to let her get a snack, which explains why she came in the third time after she realised I could possibly help her. I've neither heard or spoken to this girl since that day. I don't consider myself to be a hero by any means, but I'm so glad that I was in the right place at the right time. I'm still a little shook from that night, even to this day. But I just hope that the victim of this horrific crime is doing okay.
On December 9th of 2023, a hospital surgeon is freaking out after seeing something that she couldn't believe. According to her, she was inside the operating room filming a video for her surgical students when she had to stop and leave immediately. As she states, something was watching her. Now this video comes from a social account that doesn't post anything like this. All the videos on this page are purely educational and meant for students who want to become surgical technicians. But this video, however, was posted for anyone who could help explain this. Tiffany has no idea what was captured, but hopes that someone does. This is her footage. Watch.
At chromic catgut, the difference is, I'm so sorry, my brain. Okay, here we go, back. Okay. So here we have two different kinds of sutures, polypropylene monofilament and chromic catgut. The difference between these two is that this one is dissolvable and it's animal derived, and the sutures last anywhere from 60 to 90 days. Literally tearing up right now. I saw it. I saw it.
You saw it?
Yeah, I saw it. Can you please just show yourself? Just give me a sign. Do whatever you want.
baby is that? Anyways.
Yo, please help me. I don't know what the fuck is happening, man. Like, I just woke up in this hospital. I don't even remember what happened yesterday. And there's nobody here. Like, please, there's nobody here. Hello? Can somebody help me? Like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Like, I'm stuck in here, man. Like, there's no way out. Somebody please help. Like, what the fuck? Hello? Is there anybody here? Oh my god. What's happening? This can't be real, right? This can't be real. What is this? And see, I can't get out. This is the only exit.
तो उनका जयपुर में एक हॉस्पिटल के अंदर कुछ था काम, शायद सर्जरी वर्जरी का काम था, तो वो बस में बैठ के जा रहे थे रास्ते में बस में बैठे थे, उनके पास में एक लड़की बैठी थी, राजपूती परिधान थे उसके, तो राजपूत लड़की थी वो। चलते चलते बस का भाई साहब एक्सीडेंट हो गया बढ़िया वाला। अब ये अंकल को तो कुछ नहीं हुआ, लेकिन वो लड़की उस सीटों के अंदर फंस गई। अब आपके साथ कोई पैसेंजर फंस जाएगा तो आपका फर्स्ट रिएक्शन क्या होगा? बाहर निकाल उसको। तो उसके दोनों हाथ पकड़ लिए, उसको बाहर खींचने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, और वो उनकी आंखों में दोनों में कनेक्शन बैठा, वो दर्द से कि बचा लो और ये बचाने की पूरी कोशिश कर रहे, उसके हाथों में उसका दम टूट गया लड़की का, बुरी तरह से क्रश हो गई थी वो, तो बची नहीं पाई ऑन द स्पॉट, उनके हाथ में वो मर गई। अब उनको सदमा लग गया इस बात का, चले यार अपन भी उस जगह तो अपने साथ भी होगा, 3-4 दिन तो अपन उबर ही नहीं पाएंगे। क्या होगा आपके हाथ में से डेथ हो गई तो आप दिन भर ही सोचोगे यार काश मैं उसको बचा लेता। तो उनके साथ वो हर टाइम भी सोचता काश मैं उसको बचा पाता, क्योंकि डॉक्टर का तो काम ही है। तो 3-4 दिन तक उनको ये सब किसी से बातचीत नहीं करते, बस सोचते रहते कि यार ऐसा कैसे हो गया, मैं उसको बचा लेता। भाई साहब 3-4 दिन के बाद वो लड़की उनको दिखना शुरू हो गई, कनेक्शन बन गया उनका। क्या हुआ जो दिखना शुरू हो गया उनको। अब वो सोचे मेरा इल्यूजन है, तो डॉक्टर है यार, डॉक्टर के संभाल लेगा, दिमाग खेल रहा है, इग्नोर किया। फिर भी अब तो दिखे उनको, जहाँ जाए वहाँ जाए, जहाँ घूमे वहाँ घूमे, बात नहीं करते लेकिन दिख रहे। 1 दिन ऐसा चला, उन्होंने अपनी बीवी को बताया, सबको बताया घर में, तो बोलते नहीं वो एक्सीडेंट हो गया, आपके दिमाग में चल रहा है, थोड़े दिनों में सेटल हो जाएगा। तो उनको भी लगा ठीक है, वो भी यही सोच रहे थे। फिर 3-4 दिन वो उनके पास आई, उनसे बात करती, बोलती कि मैं आपको कोई नुकसान नहीं पहुँचाऊँगी, मैं बस आपके साथ रहूँगी, आपके सारे काम वाम कर दूंगी, लेकिन मैं रहूंगी आपके साथ, मेरे पास। तो वो अटैच हो गई थी उससे कि लास्ट मोमेंट पे जिसने आपकी हेल्प करने की कोशिश की ना, तो अभी इमोशनल अटैचमेंट हो गया था। तो वो बोलते कि अब मैं तो इधर तो मेरा फिजिकल वर्ल्ड में कुछ बचा नहीं, आप में मुझे अपने पिताजी दिखते हैं, तो मैं तो आपके साथ रहूंगी। मैंने बोला ठीक है, रह लेगा, नुकसान नहीं करेगा, तो मुझे क्या दिक्कत है। अब उनके साथ ही रहती, उनको कोई भी छोटा मोटा काम हो, कप लाना है,
क्या? हाँ, कप लाना है, तुरंत
कुछ भी काम करवाना है आपको, तो अब वो छोटे मोटे से काम करवा लेते पहले। उनको लगा यार ये सब क्या चल रहा है ऐसा। तो उन्होंने दिन बोला उससे, अच्छा वो सिगरेट पीते थे, स्मोक करने की आदत उनकी, तो बोलते कि मेरे को सिगरेट पीनी है। उस कमरे में ना मेरी बीवी का पर्स रखा हुआ, वो लेकर आओ। पर्स आता है, वो पर्स खोलते हैं, उसमें चेक करते 450 रुपये पड़े थे। बोलता है जी जहाँ से ले वापस वहीं रख दो, और रख क्या जाती है। फिर वो खुद उठ के जाते हैं अपनी बीवी के पास, बोलते हैं कि मेरे को पैसे चाहिए। तो बोलते मेरे पास पैसे नहीं है। तो बोलते क्या बात कर रही है, तेरे पर्स में अंदर वाली चैन है उसके 450 रुपये पड़े। बोलते नहीं पड़े, देख लो। बोले लेकर आ, वो लेकर आते एग्जैक्ट 450 रुपये पड़े। तो तुमको कैसे पता? तो इसलिए मैं तुमसे बोल रहा था ना कि वो लड़की मेरे साथ रहती है, वो तेरा पर्स मेरे पास लेकर आई थी, मैंने गिने अपने हाथ से, उस कमरे में लेकर आई थी, वापस तेरे जहाँ रखा ना वहीं पे, बता भी पर्स यहाँ रखा है तेरा। तुमको लगा तो गड़बड़ है। तुमने बोला ऐसा कैसे हुआ, आप आत्मा थोड़ी देर रखेंगे। बोलते नहीं उसने बोला हुआ है कि अपने को किसी को नुकसान नहीं करेगी, कोई भी छोटा मोटा काम हो तो अपना कर देगी। तो अब भाई उन्होंने बोला कि अरे तो ज्यादा है। तो बोला कि देखो घर में ना ऐसे आत्मा रखना अच्छी बात नहीं है। हाँ, उनकी वाइफ ने बोला अपन इसका इलाज करते हैं। नहीं कुछ नहीं है, तुम चिंता मत करो, किसी को नुकसान नहीं पहुंचाएगी। अब ये वो दोनों का तो बाप बेटी का रिश्ता बन गया। वो तो जैसे बेटी बाप की सेवा करती है, ऐसे वो सेवा करती है।
I've been working at McDonald's now for over 5 years, and this is still my creepiest experience there. This happened 2 years ago when I was 18, and I had been working my first overnight shift on front counter. I usually work in the kitchen on overnights, so I had no interactions with any of the customers until then. I was working from 10 p.m. until 6 a.m., which is a usual overnight shift for us. Around 3 a.m., I was making some fries when I noticed a man standing there and trying to take pictures with his cell phone of me and my other female coworker, Rebecca. I pointed it out to her, and she just rolled her eyes in annoyance and went to take an order in drive-thru, telling me it happened a lot. I was instantly uncomfortable. I wanted to tell the manager, but he was in the office doing his manager stuff, and I didn't want to bother him. I went over with what I felt was a nervous smile, and quickly did my usual greeting. "Hello, what can I get for you?" He just kind of looked at me and stayed quiet. He was about 5'8", white, early 20s, medium build with dark hair and brown eyes. An average man, I would say, but something about his piercing glare made me feel super uncomfortable. Then he smiled, a smile that sent shivers down my spine. "I'll just have a coffee. Black, sweetie," he said, and I could instantly smell alcohol on his breath. I nodded and told him the price before he pulled out a $5 bill and went to hand it to me, making sure our hands touched. I avoided his gaze and went to hand back his change when he winked at me and went to go wait for his coffee. I went to go make it as fast as I could, but, just my luck, we were out of coffee on both the front counter and the drive-thru, as we don't sell much through the night. I turned around and kept as little eye contact as I possibly could. "I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to brew you a fresh pot. Should only take about 3 minutes." "Don't worry, I don't mind. I have quite the view while I wait," he replied, shooting me a wink. I just smiled awkwardly and looked away. I had to make sure I didn't fall behind on my shift, so I began to set up the muffins on the display so we had them all ready for breakfast, which starts at 4 a.m. in Canada. "So, Susan," I heard behind me, realizing it was the guy. I instantly tensed, wondering how he knew my name before I noticed I had my name tag on and quietly cursed to myself. I turned around and looked at him, and he said, "What time are you stuck here until tonight, beautiful?" I instantly panicked as I didn't do well in these situations. 7, I said nervously, which then the guy gave me a huge grin. "Oh, so you still have time before you're off, eh?" I nodded and noticed the coffee was done pouring, so I went over and made his coffee as he watched me with an intense stare. I handed it to him before saying, "Have a nice night," earning me another wink. He then waved and said as he turned around, "I'll see you later, Susan." I watched as he walked out the door and tried to calm myself down. He doesn't actually know when I'm off, so I'm okay, I thought to myself. 6 a.m. rolled around, and it was finally time to go. I still felt a little paranoid about the guy, but I knew it was now in the past. My coworker Chris was going to drop me off at home as we carpooled, so we got our stuff together and left. As we were heading to his car, I noticed a parked car with someone in it, and of course, it was the guy. I panicked and quickly told Chris that was the guy, as I had told him what happened not long ago. He instantly brought me into his coat and did his best to keep me hidden as we walked quickly to his car. He made sure no one followed the car, dropped me off, and watched as I went inside, telling me to stay safe. I thanked him before going into my house and going to bed. The next day, I went into work and got asked by my manager how I got home. I told them Chris gave me a ride. My manager looked confused and said something that made my blood run cold. "Oh, that's strange, because some guy was here looking for you just before 7. He said he was here to pick you up." I thought before that the man's intentions weren't good. Just the way he looked at me and spoke to me, like I was prey. And this pretty much confirmed it. Since then, I have refused to work front counter overnight shift, and we no longer wear our name tags overnight.
I was on my way to deliver an order from the sandwich shop I worked for. It was a quiet night, around 11 or so. I had my music playing in my car, and I was just running through the motions of the delivery. On my way to their neighborhood, I pulled up to a red light. There was nobody else at the intersection, but for some reason, the light stayed red for what felt like an abnormal amount of time. As I sat there and stared at the light, waiting for it to change, a car pulled up beside me. I only glanced over for a second, not wanting to make that awkward eye contact, but their windows were heavily tinted, like definitely more than what was legal, as I couldn't see a single thing through them. The car itself was black as well, maybe an old Toyota or something. I can't really pinpoint what it was, but I got a really uneasy feeling about them. It could have just been that we were the only two on the road. I'm really not sure. Eventually the light turned green, and I started going. I didn't get very far though, before noticing they hadn't moved. They were still parked at the intersection. Once I got further down the road, I shrugged it off, and just thought it was weird, and nothing else. A couple minutes later, I pulled off into the section of housing that the delivery was in. I'd say neighborhood, but it wasn't really a neighborhood. It was just a line of 10 or so houses, leading to a dead end. Something about it seemed really off-putting. Of all the houses on the street, not a single one had a light on. I 100% would have thought these places were abandoned, if not for the fact that the houses themselves looked really nice. They looked like ordinary neighborhood homes, with not a single sign of anything wrong with them. I figured it had to just be a coincidence that every resident down the street had their lights off. Anyway, the address I had was for the second to last house. I pulled up and parked on the curb, getting out with the order and walking up to the door. I was hoping I'd at least see some sort of light coming through the windows of this house, because it was the one I was delivering to, but standing on the porch, I didn't see any light. Reluctantly, I knocked on the door. When I did, the door swung a bit from its hinges, like it wasn't properly shut or locked. Now this was even more odd. "Sandwich delivery. Anyone home?" It was completely silent. No response, and not even the slightest sound from inside the house. I was gonna leave, but just to be sure I didn't miss anything, I cracked the door open a little further. I could see a hallway and a room. Both were empty of any furniture or decorations, not even a single picture on the wall. It only took a few seconds before dust started coming through the doorway too. I shut it and backed up from the porch. I was very confused and slightly worried. As I walked back down to my car though, I noticed something down the road. A few houses back, there was a small black car that wasn't there when I pulled in. Its headlights were off, and it was parked. Once I saw the tinted windows, I immediately recognized it. I felt my face go white, knowing this could not possibly be a coincidence at this point. I started to hurry to my car, but as I got just a few feet away from the road, I saw something move in the reflection of one of the windows. I wasn't sure what it was that I saw, but I stopped in place. I was standing near the passenger door, and through the window, my eyes fell on the back seat. It was dark, but there was something blocking the back window. It only took me about a second for me to realize what I saw. I turned and bolted back to the house. As I did, the back door to my car swung open, and a man in a black hoodie and black pants came running out. He didn't chase me though. He ran straight down to the road and into his car. I stayed on the porch, and with my heart pounding, I dialed 911. I probably could have gotten in my car and left at that point, but I was too scared to really think straight. Police arrived and immediately told me that this whole street was unoccupied, as the homes were new builds. Guess that explains why I thought they looked so nice and not abandoned. What I definitely didn't expect was to hear them say that they've had multiple reports this past week, very similar to mine. The guy would order something for delivery with a fake name and address, then follow the driver. What happened to me was the closest call of any of them, though. The guy had snuck inside my car and was waiting for me to get in and maybe even drive away. Who knows what he was trying to do? Unfortunately, there haven't been any updates on finding him.
Man, I've been clocked in 8 minutes. Hey! Hey! I'm not finna go check shit. I'm going down there. Shit. Oh, goddamn, the door lock? Oh. Damn. There is somebody down there. They're gonna stay their goddamn ass down there. I'm not going. We're gonna get a lead. Hey, somebody's in here with me. I'm up here doing this damn job. These folks want me to do all this walking in the dark. I'm not walking down there no motherfucking dark. Hey. Hey. Not coming the fuck out there, man. Somebody's down there with me. Somebody in here with me. And I got my camera on. You can go if you just come out. I'll let you go free. But don't try to just pop out on me. You know what I'm saying? Skirt the fuck out of me, make me shit all on myself on the job. Come on now. Come on now, I'm just trying to get my goddamn hours to go home.
Now whoever's back that remains hidden.
You don't act like you don't hear me. You know you back there, come on.
Not wanting to find out, he gets out of there.
I worked graveyard shift for a long time. One night about 25 years ago, I had caught up with my night's work, but was unable to back up the work I had done. I decided to clock out and drive to Walmart to buy a box of new discs and leave the receipt for our bookkeeper so she could reimburse me. A few days after this incident, we learned that our computer had a virus that was corrupting the floppy disks we were using. So, you get the picture, floppy disks for backup, no cell phones for most of us. It was a primitive time. I arrived at Walmart at about 3 a.m., went in and found the discs. I decided to visit the toy department as it was early November and I wanted to get Christmas gift ideas for my son, as well as several nieces and nephews. While I browsed, I felt someone watching me. I looked around and there were 3 men nearby, and all were staring at me. I looked back at them long enough to fix their appearances in my mind and went on looking at toys. I was in no hurry. I was off the clock and wouldn't need much time to back up my work after I got back to the office, so I continued to look around, even strolled through housewares for a few minutes. Every time I looked over my shoulder, those 3 guys were close and watching me. After the second time, alarms were sounding in my head. They were repellent looking, with pasty pale faces, as if they spent all their time indoors, eating junk food, and their eyes were cold and hard. What disturbed me most was the way they were dressed, much too warmly for the weather that night. Even though it was November, it was about 55 degrees outside. I was perfectly comfortable in a jean jacket. These guys were in heavy coats suitable for sub-freezing temperatures, and they had them buttoned to their necks inside the store. The only reason I could think of for that was that they were hiding weapons beneath those coats. I finally headed toward the cash registers, thinking that, if no one else was leaving the store when I did, I would ask the cashier to call security and request an escort to my vehicle. As I reached the register, I saw my stalkers standing just inside the doors. They muttered among themselves for a moment, then they exited the store. As I was paying, a man and woman lined up behind me. I had seen them shortly before I neared the register, and they didn't seem to be paying any attention to me. I moved to the area between the registers and the doors and stood waiting for the couple, fiddling with my buttons, blowing my nose. When they moved toward the doors, so did I, staying just a few steps ahead of them. I had parked not far outside, and I reached my vehicle quickly. The stalkers were sitting in a car that was parked nose to nose with my pickup truck. I hopped in, locked the door, then sat back and stared at them. The couple I had used as my unwitting escorts walked past me and the stalkers and got into a car a few spaces away. They left. After a minute or two, the stalker driver said something to the others, started the engine, and pulled away. I watched as they slowly left the parking lot, then ascended the nearby interstate highway overpass and took the entrance ramp. Only then did I start my engine. I took my time looking around as the engine warmed. I continued along the street for a couple of miles past the interstate, then pulled into a dark lot behind a strip mall, turned off my lights and engine and waited, watching the few vehicles that passed. I wanted to be certain that I would not lead those guys to my office building, which was isolated and, at that hour, usually deserted, except for me. After my pulse slowed to normal, I restarted the truck and returned to work. I am female, but I'm almost 6 feet tall and weigh about 175 pounds. I know that my size has protected me from a lot of mayhem over the years. I was also armed that night. I carried a loaded Smith & Wesson .357 revolver, as well as a speed loader, which is like an extra cylinder full of bullets. Still, I probably would have been no match for 3 determined assailants. This experience cured me of my nonchalance about running errands in the wee hours and validated my conviction that any time I get the feeling of someone's eyes crawling over me, it's wise to look around and find the reason. About 3 months later, my husband and I were watching the local evening news, and they showed photos of 2 of the stalkers. They were wanted for armed robbery.
This story happened to me on a Saturday night. It happened when I was with my girlfriend, who we'll call Lisa for the sake of the story. I was sitting on my bed watching TV while Lisa was on her laptop working on a school report for her English class. It was due the following Monday, which kept her busy on the laptop for the majority of the weekend. My parents were out of town, so we had the house to ourselves. I'd just like to point out that Lisa and I were polar opposites from each other. I say this because she was a goth who fantasized over dark and morbid kind of things. I was the complete opposite from that. However, our different personalities didn't stop us from pursuing a relationship with one another, as we'd been together for about 4 months now. I'd also like to point out that Lisa was extremely socially awkward if she was talking to anyone other than myself. There was a time where I invited her over to a family dinner with my parents. Lisa was understandably a bit shy at first, but as the night progressed, it turned out to be less awkward than I anticipated. Near the end of dinner, my dad asked Lisa, "So Lisa, if you could have anything in the world other than Jack, what would it be?"
I don't know if I feel comfortable answering that.
What do you mean? What else would you want other than my son?
Harold, stop it. Sweetie, you can tell us only if you want.
I could tell Lisa was getting uncomfortable about the impromptu interrogation my parents decided to have by the look on her face.
Well, it's complicated.
To be honest, I was a little taken back by that statement, as I thought I knew everything about her. I decided to chime in saying, what do you mean, Lisa? Things took a total 180 when Lisa says,
Don't you guys wish you could resurrect your dead loved ones?
Sure, I guess I would. My family found Lisa quite bizarre since that day, but oddly enough, accepted her for who she was. Fast forward to now, and that statement that Lisa made would all make sense to me. Lisa was tired of the monotony of her report, so we decided to head to the balcony. I remember both of us being out of our minds while gazing out into the horizon. Midway through, Lisa offhandedly makes an odd remark saying,
It would be pretty cool if I could see Todd again.
Todd was Lisa's ex. I found this quite strange that she would say such a thing, considering the fact that we were both dating each other. I assumed she was out of her mind, but sadly that didn't stop me from giving her a piece of my mind. I agitatedly said,
Fine, go see him then. It's not like I ever liked you.
Lisa then gives me a death stare like she wanted to throw me off the balcony. I stare back at her while I casually take another. A long pause of awkward silence occurred, but then I had a nostalgic moment. I remembered Lisa mentioning something about Todd passing away just before we dated. His cause of death was due to undisclosed reasons I won't get into. Everything Lisa was saying all made sense now. She was just expressing that she wanted to see Todd again since he was no longer here with us. I attributed my lack of memory to being out of my mind, which helped make the mishap more plausible, so I extend my arm to pass the to Lisa. She then slaps the out of my hand and aggressively says,
He was better than you anyway.
I had gotten into arguments with Lisa in the past, but I could tell she was at her boiling point this time. She then storms out of my place and immediately gets into her car. Despite being wrong in the situation, I stupidly shouted from the balcony saying,
Fine, have fun fishing on Tinder, loser!
She then flips me the bird and begins driving off into the distance. I eventually head back to my bedroom and continue to watch TV. About 5 minutes later, I couldn't help but feel guilty about what I did. I then decide to text Lisa saying, Please come back to my house. I'm not trying to fight. I also have a free place and more in case you forgot. A couple minutes go by and I get no reply. That's when I start becoming more anxious. I kept contemplating whether I should call Lisa, but I didn't want to submit to the fact that I was begging for her forgiveness. I continued watching television. That's when I noticed Lisa's laptop sitting on my computer desk. She had stormed off and obviously forgot to take it with her. I noticed that Lisa had left her school report still open on a Word document, so I decided to proofread it, thinking it would be my silly way of apologizing to her. The report was titled, Be with your loved ones, even when they're dead. This wasn't that surprising as I knew the kind of person Lisa was, but it was also disturbing due to the circumstances that had just occurred on the balcony. I skimmed through the report and find Lisa talking about a relationship and how she wasn't internally happy and needed some sort of closure. I became more and more anxious the further I read into the report. She goes into detail about her past relationship with Todd and how she misses him tremendously. As I skim through more of the report, I come across a part where Lisa talks about being able to reconnect with Todd through a satanic blog she found online. To summarize what she said, it basically insinuated that you would have to go to the last spot where the person died and die the same way. That way you'll be able to reconnect with them in the afterlife. I begin panicking and call Lisa's cell phone. She then picks up the phone and says,
What do you want?
In a voice full of disdain and hatred. I try to pretend like I knew nothing about the report and say, Please come back. I'm sorry about everything that happened. I'm sorry about what I said.
There's no coming back from this, Jack.
That's when I hear the sound of a train honking from a distance. My heart dropped and I yelled,
Lisa, where the hell are you?
Where I should have been all along.
I could hear the train getting louder and louder, like it was coming with a full head of steam towards her direction. I began shouting,
Lisa, get the hell out of there! Lisa, please, I'm sorry!
Desperately trying to stop her from what I knew she was about to do.
Lisa, I'm sorry, okay? Get the hell out of there! Please!
Oh, Lisa, please, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Lisa, please, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please come back. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I was such an awful boyfriend. I'm sorry, Lisa. She then said,
See you again, Todd.
No! No, Lisa!
Oh, Lisa, please, I'm sorry.
I was 18, I got a job at Walmart, a small town with not much else to offer for someone fresh out of high school. I'd been there for about a month, working in the jewelry department. My shifts usually started in the mid-afternoon and lasted until the department closed at 9 p.m. Although I closed the department by myself, Walmart being a 24-hour store meant there were always other people around. One night, as I was locking the display cases and putting items away, an overnight stalker walked by and greeted me. I looked up, smiled, and returned the greeting before continuing with my tasks. The only way I can describe him is by likening him to one of the Bee Gees. He had shoulder-length, frizzy hair and a bouncy hop to his step when he walked. He was in his mid-50s. This became a regular occurrence. On nights when I closed by myself, he would pass by, say hi, and I would respond in kind. No conversations ever transpired between us. Then, on my birthday, a few of my coworkers got me a cake, and I hugged them and expressed my gratitude.
In 1979, a teenage girl accepts a babysitting job at an isolated home in the Minnesota woods. After putting the children to bed, she settles on the couch to watch TV, only to be startled by a phone call. She picks it up and hears heavy breathing, when suddenly a man's unsettling voice asks, "Have you checked on the children?" Nervous, she dismisses it as a prank and hangs up. 15 minutes later, the phone rings again. This time the voice asks, "Why haven't you checked on the children?" Panic sets in and she calls 911. The operator advises her to keep the caller on the line if they call back, allowing the call to be traced. Moments later, the phone rings again, and the voice snarls, "Check on the children now." Trembling, she keeps the call connected as instructed. Once more the phone rings. The operator's voice crackles through, urgent and frantic. "Get out of the house. The calls are coming from upstairs." Terrified but worried about the children, she hesitates before fleeing outside. She bolted out of the house, her heart pounding in her chest. There, a tall man stepped out of the shadows, his presence looming as he stared her down with a chilling intensity, and he asked in a cold, menacing voice, "Why didn't you check on the children?"
Back in the 80s, I was a gas station attendant. That job was being phased out across the country around that time in favor of self-service pumps, but I only took it as a temporary job to save money for college. I grew up in a rural area, and the gas station I worked at only had 4 pumps. I worked the second shift, from the early afternoon until the station closed at 10. Things would be busy around rush hour, then slowly die out. Most people were home by 8 and not getting gas at night. However, there was this one guy that would come around every few days just minutes before close. He drove a convertible sports car and always had the top down. He was fairly handsome, but he had a strange vibe about him that always creeped me out. Most customers would keep the talking to a minimum, which is the way I preferred it, but this guy was a talker, always trying to make conversation with me. Over time, we became increasingly familiar with each other, whether I liked it or not. He asked me my name and gave me his, Sean. I never learned his last name, though. He liked to ask me what my plan for life was, not very subtly implying I should ditch my job and skip town with him in his convertible. Things only got weirder and weirder with Sean from there. He always asked me to wash his windshield, and he would smile while watching me the whole time. One day, he made a very bold remark as he pulled up. He said he'd love to have me service him every day, but he just doesn't need that much gas. Then, as he was handing me cash to pay for the gas, he said he'd pay to have me service him in other ways too. That really put me on edge. See, in that time period, especially in rural areas like that, it was quite a risk to be openly gay. I was worried this guy was some kind of cop too, so I lied and said I wasn't like that. Sean was persistent though, and even went into detail about how I could service him. I finally managed to shut it down after a few times, but I could tell he hadn't quite given up. Then, in an unusual turn, Sean showed up again the very next night, at the same time as always. I had a feeling he was coming just to see me, as nobody is ever going to burn through a tank of gas in a day under normal circumstances, though he quickly mentioned that he was going on a road trip and wanted to top off before heading out. Breaking his routine again, he got out of the car and said he was going into the store to get snacks for the road. I was just standing there, wondering why someone would start a road trip at 10 p.m. Then, a few moments later, as I was turned away from the store and pumping gas into his car, I felt something cold press against my lower back. Sean hadn't gone into the store at all. He was standing right behind me. I couldn't tell what he was holding, but he told me we were going on that road trip together. I froze up. I realized that the cashier's view of what was happening was obstructed by the pump, so I was essentially helpless. In a low, cold voice, Sean told me to put the nozzle back and close the tank. I did as he said. Then, he ordered me to go around to the passenger door. Once there, he told me to get inside and sit down. When I was in the car, he leaned down onto the door and discreetly set a pistol on it, pointed right at me. Sean said without a shred of doubt in his voice that he didn't mind shooting me if I tried to run. It would just be another hole for him, he said. Then, he walked around to the other side of the car and got in. He turned on the engine and got in gear. Then we were rolling away. My mind was racing as we turned around and passed the store. I felt Sean's hand on my thigh. He was smiling, telling me I had made the right choice. I could see the gun sitting in his lap. I tried to...
Nate worked as a night shift security guard in San Antonio, Texas. He said he doesn't believe in ghosts, but he has heard the building he works for is haunted, but he just kind of called them folklore. So the building that he guarded housed a well-known company, and his job requires him to work the graveyard shift alone. No skeleton crew, no staff, no custodians. He was responsible for responding to camera activity on the building's 11 floors and conducting periodic patrols. So the building's alarm system automatically activated at a set time each night. It requires him to ensure that no employees remained inside to trigger the alarms. So the building's alarm system automatically activates at a set time each night. And so this requires him to ensure that no employees remain inside to trigger the alarms. So about an hour into his shift, he finished his walkthrough, convinced the building was empty, and that's when he received a notification of a motion detected on the 8th floor. So checking the camera feed, he saw nothing out of the ordinary, but still protocol dictate that he investigate. As the elevator doors opened, a blast of icy air greeted him. He described it was so cold it felt like stepping into a walk-in freezer. Uneasy but determined, he swept the floor and found nothing and then returned back to his desk. So when he got there, another motion alert chimed, this time on the 7th floor. So the camera showed nothing except a single open door at the end of the hall, which appeared to be a custodian's closet. And he knew that all the doors had been locked earlier, but he had to go investigate anyways. So the chilling temperature hit him again as he stepped off the elevator, and when he reached the area where the door had been opened on the camera, it was closed. Whoever or whatever had been there must have closed it within the 40 seconds it took for him to arrive. He didn't linger to find out more and return to the lobby. So a few hours later, another chime alerted him to the activity on the 6th floor. So this time the camera showed what looked like a very tall figure standing in the doorway. So at this image, his heart raced. He has to...
A few years ago, I used to work as a Walmart cashier. This is a job that I only had for about 3 months. I would typically work afternoons and evenings, and I was only part-time. I should also mention that I was a 17-year-old female at the time, and I'm in my 20s now. This was my second job ever, and really wasn't that bad. I would just scan items for customers, and most of my shifts were anywhere from 4 to 8 hours long. One time, I was working 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the check lanes. Things started out fairly busy and slowly got quieter as the night went on. I was kept busy for almost the entire time with many customers going through my line. Most of the customers were nice, but every now and then there would be a strange one or a rude one. I would always try to be polite and sometimes make pleasant conversation. Early on in my shift, probably about an hour into it, a man came into my check lane. I don't remember what he bought, but it was just a couple of items. When he got face-to-face with me to pay, he asked me what time I got off of work. I told him that I got off at 9, not thinking much of it, assuming he was just making conversation with me. The guy was a little bit taller than me, so not very tall. I'm only 5'3". He also had short dark hair, like a buzz cut, and was wearing baggy shorts and a t-shirt. After I told him when I got off, he said, "See you then," and kind of smiled. Then he took his items and walked away. I took this as a joke because it honestly seemed like one to me, the way he smiled and sort of laughed. It was sure weird though, but whatever. I kept on working after that. Hours went by and I forgot all about the man. But later that night, he actually showed up again. I was almost done with my shift and still working at the same register. Things were much quieter in the store now. I remember that as I was scanning items for a customer, I happened to notice the guy walking near me. He was coming from a direction as if he had just entered the store. When he got close to me, he looked at me and said, "Just 10 more minutes, right?" I looked at my watch and it was 8:50. I was confused, but I just kind of said, yeah, and smiled a little. The guy then walked away and I was left wondering why he was here again and why he asked me that. At that time, I was just glad that he had walked away. I kept working, still not thinking too much of it. 10 minutes later, when it was 9 o'clock now, I was done working and I left my check lane. I went in, clocked out, got my things, and then started walking for the exit. When I made it out of the store, I began walking to my car. I was parked at the far back end of the parking lot because it was really busy when I had got there. But I made it no farther than 10 feet when a car suddenly pulled up in front of me. It was this little red 2-door car, and it stopped right in front of me. Before I could walk around it, the driver's window rolled down, and I could see the man was driving it. It was the same guy who had talked to me inside. He told me to get in his car on the passenger side. I said that I couldn't, and I started to walk around his car behind it. That's when he started backing up before I could get there. It was like he was trying to block my way with his car, and he told me again to get inside. He kept on nagging me, and I tried to walk farther away. At that point, I just started running. I was able to make it past his car, and I started running for mine. He then began to drive in the direction that I was running in. When I got to my car, I unlocked it and got inside. The man then pulled into the space next to mine before I could drive away. I knew that he would probably follow me wherever I went. At least my doors were locked, and I was away from him. He did not get out of his car, but instead rolled down a window again and tried talking to me some more. I ignored what he was saying, and I texted a coworker who I knew was still inside working. Before long, he told the store manager about it. I waited in my car and tried to ignore the man as best as I could. Within a couple of minutes, one of our store managers had walked out into the parking lot and approached the man's vehicle. He asked what the guy was doing and threatened to call the police if he didn't leave. The man finally started backing up and then drove away. I waited for a bit, and soon after, I left and went home. After that night, I never saw the man again. I worked there for maybe another month and then quit. Looking back, I'm grateful to my coworker and manager. I really believe that this guy would have followed me home in his car. I don't know exactly what he wanted, but it was a really bizarre situation.
Пару месяцев назад познакомился я в инете с девчонкой. За разговорами пролетало настолько незаметно, что казалось, только-только наступило утро. Моргнул разок и спать лечь. Да так получилось, ну я ж тебе говорил, какой он настойчивый. Если что-то задумал, то делай, что хочешь, но от него не отвертишься. Мне кажется, он на тебя плохо влияет. Ты вот уже и врать мне начал. Да просто спонтанно получилось, и вообще, что в этом такого? Могу я с другом в конце концов время провести или нет? С таким другом, как твой Лёнь?
This happened to me when I was working at McDonald's. My boss assigned a schedule amongst our staff. I was unfortunately scheduled for the night shift on Fridays. I didn't usually mind as we didn't get a whole lot of business around this time of night. My boss was pretty laid back and didn't mind if I went on my phone during business hours, so long as I got all my work done. I remember dozing off repeatedly due to the fact that I wasn't fully acclimated with the night shift hours. Psst. That's when I heard someone making a psst sound, the kind of sound you make when you try to draw someone's attention. I notice a customer trying to make an order outside, so I quickly greet them with my usual, "Hi, welcome to McDonald's, may I take your order?" I then heard a man say, "One Whopper, please?" "Yes, I would like one Whopper, please." I couldn't tell if he was being a smartass or not, so I ended up saying, "This isn't Burger King, sir, we don't serve that here." I heard him chuckling profusely after I said that. I quickly checked the security camera, only to see a clown. The clown was standing in front of the drive-thru menu without a car. It's not Halloween, why the hell is this guy dressed up like that? I really didn't want to serve this guy, so I decided to use our company policy as a plausible excuse for him to exit the premises. "Hi sir, unfortunately you need to be in a vehicle in order to purchase something here." "If you don't have a Whopper, I'll take a Baconator instead." I now could tell this guy was some random psycho harassing me. I instinctively yelled, "Get the hell out of here before I call the cops!" I cautiously stick my head out the window, only to see the clown no longer there. A couple hours later, near the end of my shift, I notify my boss and fellow employees regarding the situation. They all dismiss my accusations by saying ignorant things like, "Did you get his autograph?" Or, "It was probably some guy that thought it was Halloween." I annoyingly pretend to be amused and head home. The following Friday, it was my time to work the night shift again. I really dreaded working this shift, especially after what transpired that day. I tried to convince myself that it would be highly unlikely that I encounter that clown again. As time went on, I remember dozing off as I get startled by another psst sound. I urgently check the security camera but don't see anyone present. At this point, I genuinely thought I was hearing things due to my subconscious mind thinking about the clown. My paranoia must have been at the peak of its height. That's when I turn my head towards the drive-thru window, only to see the clown staring dead at me. "If you don't make me a Big Mac, I will kill you. Trevor." My heart sank to my stomach. The clown knew my name. I immediately grabbed my cell phone to call the cops, but my hands were trembling so much that I actually wasn't capable of dialing anything. The clown started banging his head on the glass while screaming my name, Trevor, repeatedly. "Trevor, Trevor, Trevor, I am not loving it! Trevor, 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 Trevor!" I see blood dripping down from his head. I started shouting from the top of my lungs, "Leave me alone or I will call the cops!" The clown runs away as another car approaches the drive-thru lot. I stupidly resume work and wait for my boss to come in. Upon his arrival, I explain the entire situation to him. He then dismisses me by saying, "Don't sweat it, kid. It was probably some drunk. You can go home now." As he was talking, I notice a cut on his forehead. I could even see blood start to drip from it. No, it can't be. "Goodbye, Trevor." No!
Here are some very creepy true stories that happened at Walmart. The first one is called The Lady in the Bee Costume. This is about an 18-year-old girl who worked the night shift at Walmart. And for some reason, precisely at 1:30 in the morning, like on the dot, she would get what she called the bumblebee as a visitor. The bumblebee was an old woman wearing a bee Halloween costume. She had a stinger, wings, and everything. And she was never outrageous with her behavior. She would never purchase
purchase anything? She was just a bee, and this employee never asked why, but always 1:30 in the morning. Next, we have a story about a magic 8-ball. This is about a little kid that was walking through Walmart with his mom when he snuck a magic 8-ball into the cart because he always wanted one. Well, the mother didn't notice until they got to the cash register, and when she saw it, she got a little bit freaked out. She told her son that this toy was extremely evil, and he should not even be near it, let alone take it home. Well, the kid started crying because he wanted it so bad, and then he said, "But I want to talk to the tall, dark man in the house." So yeah, that would freak me out. By the way, a lot of people use magic 8-balls to like talk to ghosts. Like they'll ask the ghost a question, they'll shake up the magic 8-ball to get their answer. Then we have a story called The Whistle Man.
Most terrifying videos you ever seen. This.
I'm 32 and work for a trucking company. This was around the holidays. The roads weren't too bad for the most part, but driving in winter was always a little bit more tiring. This day, or night rather, was normal. I left town at 6 p.m. to deliver a load 2 states away. At about 11 p.m., I made my first stop. I pulled into a small truck stop on the side of the road, just use the bathroom and grab a coffee, and maybe rest my eyes for a little bit. I parked and went into the building, then came back out with my coffee and hopped back into the driver's seat. I took a moment to myself and just sat there, taking a few sips and looking around. Only a couple other trucks were in the parking lot. Guess it was a quiet night. As I sat there, I happened to spot someone at the back of the building. The lights were dim back there, but some guy was leaning against the wall and looking out in my direction. I couldn't see his eyes, but my truck was the only one parked over here. There was nothing else to look at. I minded my own business and just kept sipping my coffee, but every time I looked back, the guy was still looking over here. I was sure it was nothing, but it still felt too weird for me to get any shut-eye. Snow was starting to come down as well. I put my drink in the cup holder and started up the truck, then pulled out and began the next section of the drive. The coffee definitely kicked in, keeping my eyes open. The roads were completely empty. About 30-ish minutes down the road, a light glimmered in my side mirror for just a moment, like a glint reflecting off of something behind my trailer. I kept checking my mirrors, thinking it was a car coming up, but there was nothing behind me that I could see. Maybe it was a broken reflector on the road or something. I didn't know. The snow was beginning to pile up a bit on the road though, so for the next while I was more focused on what was ahead of me, making sure I made it in one piece. I think a good hour or so went by. Focusing on the road was getting more exhausting with every minute, but then again there was a quick glint in my side mirror. I only barely shifted my eyes quick enough to catch what it was. There was a car right behind my trailer, like so close that it was completely covered in my mirrors. Its headlights were off too, so only when it was slightly off to the side did my headlights reflect onto theirs, creating that little glint I was seeing. I was no stranger to having people tailgating me for going slow, but this was really strange though, in this weather being that close to me and with no headlights. What were they doing? After a minute or two of thinking about it, I thought it best to get away from them, or at least keep them off my tail, for both of our safety. I merged into the other lane, but the car followed. Confused, I merged back into the right lane. This time I think they got the hint that I was on to them, and they stayed on their side. They started to slow down though, and eventually they fell out of sight. I didn't have a clue what they were doing, but at least they were off my back. I drove on the quiet road through the snow for another 2 hours. It was around 3 a.m., and I decided to pull off at a rest stop to get a few hours of shut-eye. It was just one of those little cutaways off the road that could fit maybe 2 or 3 semis. There was no building or restrooms, it was just a parking area. I parked, cut off the engine, leaned my chair all the way back, and closed my eyes. I dozed off pretty fast. I was used to being limited on sleep, so every minute counts. The calm winds and snow trickling down definitely helped though. I planned to wake up whenever the sun came up, so like 3-ish hours, but I woke up before that. I slowly opened my eyes, seeing the dark truck cabin and the faint highway lights in front of me. I was still really tired. I didn't know why I woke up. After a second, I rolled my body over to reposition myself, but was instantly met with the eyes of something outside my window. They were staring in at me with disturbingly wide, creepy eyes. I almost fell out of my seat, but the guy didn't even flinch. He just stepped down and tried to open the door, but after a few tries, I heard his footsteps rushing away in the snow. I used the radio to call for help, and moments later, a car drove out from behind my truck. It was the same one that was on the road before. I gave as much of a description as I could, and it was as the officers asked me to go over everything that happened that night that I remembered the man I saw watching me at the truck stop. Maybe it was him this whole time. But why was he stalking me? And what was he trying to do? I never found out.